Welcome back to another entry in The Real Gear of MGS. In this episode, we'll be beginning to dive into the weapons, items, and equipment from Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. There's obviously a lot to potentially cover here, and that means a lot will have to wait for a future video. If this video gets enough likes and support, I'll make that a reality. One of the most iconic guns that Snake uses in MGS3 has to be the Mark 22 Mod 0, the Hush Puppy. This was a modified version of the Smith & Wesson Model 39 designed for naval special warfare stealth operators during Vietnam. What made it stealthy was not only its detachable suppressor, but a lock that would stop the slide from noisily jerking backwards after firing a shot. According to Guns.com, even now the specific operations that the Mark 22 were utilized on remain classified. It's since been outphased for special operations by a .45 caliber gun, the Navy's Mark 23. Snake's other sidearm, the M1911A1, gets plenty of coverage in the actual game.
Incredible.
Do you like it?
The feeding ramp is polished to a mirror sheen. The slide's been reinforced, and the interlock with the frame is tightened for added precision. The sight system is original too. The thumb safety is extended to make it easier on the finger. A long type trigger with non-slip grooves. A ring hammer. The base of the trigger guard's been filed down for a higher grip. And not only that, nearly every part of this gun has been expertly crafted and customized.
But just in case it's needed, here's a brief, more general refresher. The 1911 is a .45 caliber pistol that has its roots in the Spanish-American War. From the very beginning, in other words, this gun was associated with close quarters, asymmetrical jungle warfare. Its degree of stopping power reflected the need to put down sieging insurgents in the Philippines. Though the pistol was not completed by legendary gunsmith John Browning until, as the name conveys, the year 1911, it would soon enough see action in Mexico, World War I, and Korea. If I was being honest, I'd say the gun is also, arguably, synonymous with colonialism. Frequently, it was a fixture in neo-colonial conflicts, like the so-called Banana Wars in Latin America at the early part of the 20th century. It's also become a law enforcement staple, used at one point or another by everyone from Border Patrol to the Texas Rangers and the FBI.
Aha! You're using the easy gun.
Yeah. What is this gun anyway? I've never seen anything like it.
Of course you haven't. It's a noise-suppressed tranquilizer gun I designed especially for Fox.
A noise-suppressed tranquilizer gun? But it doesn't have a...
It doesn't need a suppressor.
What do you mean?
The noise-suppressing mechanism is built into the tranquilizer rounds themselves. The inside of the powder case contains a tiny piston. It's set up so that when the firing gas pushes the piston pushes the bullet out of the chamber. The firing gas is sealed within the chamber by the piston, preventing it from escaping outside. That's why there's no sound when it fires.
Fascinating.
While I was at it, I also fitted it with an experimental laser sight. That ought to give you a good aim even when you're shooting from the hip. And just having the easy gun equipped makes it tougher for your camo index to drop.
Wow.
And it'll help you recover your stamina.
Nice.
On top of all that, it looks just like a Liberator.
A what?
A Liberator. We supplied them to the resistance in Europe during World War II. They look alike, don't they?
Yeah.
To be honest, that's the part I had the most trouble with. Getting the feature I just mentioned to work in a gun of that size and shape wasn't easy.
But why?
Why what?
Why'd you go to all the trouble of making it look like a Liberator?
'Cause it looks cool, man. Why do you think?
On the very easy difficulty, you start out Snake Eater with this, the Easy Gun. It's based on a World War II era unconventional pistol manufactured by the US to be used by resistance forces behind enemy lines, mainly as a weapon of psychological warfare more than anything else. It was called the FP-45 Liberator, and it could only fire a single shot. The Liberator had a range of about 4 yards. The idea was that by mass-producing these and airdropping them into Nazi-occupied Europe, the enemy would never be able to keep track of all of the guns in circulation. And anyway, up close, a resistance fighter could use one to kill a Nazi and take their weapon. As I said before, I'm saving a lot of the gear in MGS and all the MGS games for future videos. So now, instead of another weapon, let's jump to a different piece of gear entirely: Snake's night vision goggles. The pair that Snake picks up in Selenoyarsk are Soviet-made. In reality, it's true that the Soviets actually did achieve night vision optics relatively far ahead of the West. Typically, these were powered by a rechargeable battery and mounted directly onto a weapon like the AKM assault rifle. How about the key card that Granin gives you? Well, it's actually a punch card, which in the 1960s was actually a transmission medium used for digital data. In fact, some of the earliest computers used these not only for data, but even for computer programs. Though, to be sure, many computers also use the format of magnetic tape. Another iconic weapon from Snake Eater is, of course, Snake's survival knife. Most likely, it's styled off the Marine Corps combat knife from World War II, the K-bar. This survival knife was created for dual-use purposes, meaning not only for combat, but also as a utility tool. It made a name for itself in the Pacific, where American and Japanese soldiers went toe-to-toe in sometimes close-quarters jungle warfare. Like Snake uses it in MGS3, the K-bar was part of hand-to-hand combat. Marines use slashing techniques to close with an enemy. Slashing techniques distract or damage an opponent so that the Marine can close in. What video on the gear of MGS3 would be complete without at least passing reference to some form of camo, medicine, and food? For this video, we'll focus on one of each. One item I've actually been meaning to mention that's in all three of the original Metal Gear Solid games is the anti-anxiety drug, that in MGS1 was called Diazepam, and in the other games is called Pentazemin. Diazepam is what the drug's actually called in real life. Presumably it was changed to Pentazemin to avoid glamorizing drug use. Diazepam does actually reduce muscle spasms, typically in the treatment of anxiety conditions, just not in the way that it does in the MGS universe. It turns out that the US military in the real world actually does provide soldiers in certain contexts with a form of diazepam, but not to steady their aim. Diazepam is used in a so-called convulsive antidote nerve agent, or CANA kit, and given to GIs if there's a potential danger of their exposure to nerve agents, in other words, chemical weapons.
Snake, try to remember some of the basics of CQC.
Now, for camo, let's look at the kind that Naked Snake starts out with, olive drab. This appears to be modeled on the tropical combat uniform worn by Special Forces officers during Vietnam. Custom made by Natick Labs, the TCU was quick drying and lightweight. The olive drab outfit worn by both Snake and the Boss also bears some resemblance to the standard US Armed Forces fatigues from 1952 to 89, the olive green or OG 107 uniform. Lastly, for this video anyway, let's look at an early yet iconic source of food in Snake Eater, the Gabiel Crocodile. At the end of its snout is a hollow bulbous structure known as a boss, which resembles a pot in India and Pakistani culture called a gara, which is how this crocodilian gets its name. The Gavial is a somewhat mythological animal in Hindu culture, seeing as it's associated with a river goddess, Ganga, and the wind god, Varuna. It's also the subject of some controversy among biologists who aren't really sure if it evolved before or after related members of the Crocodilia family. Sadly, there are, as of 2017, only a maximum total number of Gavials of 900. Well, that's all for this video. With your support, we'll return to Snake Eater at least one more time in a follow-up video. Until next time, boss.